getting farther behind.
Do you want these?
The next batch?
Yes, the next batch are the quotes, right? Okay, anyone not get around to this?
No, actually, I have a question on the 5-pager.
Yes.
We were discussing that Sutra and Tantra. I mean, of course, you would want us to talk about the different sutra vehicles, Hinayana, Mahayana, or is there some specific? How general are we using? I mean, Sutra and Tantra. I'm just wondering.
Hinayana, Mahayana, within Mahayana, perfection vehicle and Tantra vehicle.
Okay.
Is that, what else would it be?
Okay.
Okay.
Just how much do you want us to cover was the question.
Oh, absolutely, everything. 5 pages. Double spaced. No, because they're not a different vehicle. This is vehicle topic, vehicle talk. We haven't gotten to the topic of the 4 temples, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I want to know. What do you want me to exclude?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Hinayana, do you want to bring Hinayana into it?
Yes, difference between Hinayana and Mahayana. You don't need to detail the difference between the hero vehicle and solitary realizer vehicle, although I will read some material today that outlines the personality, difference between the personality types. Yes?
Actually, I had a question on that when I was trying to do the paper. Isn't a solitary realizer, doesn't a solitary realizer have omniscience? I mean, isn't it a Buddha?
They're called Pratyekabuddhas. But they are not Buddha.
Oh, they are.
Buddha, Chandrakirti takes as realize, and they realize suchness. They're middling realizers of suchness. They realize suchness, thus they are Buddhas.
Okay.
But they are not fully enlightened beings.
So they haven't, they're just like the foe destroyers in the sense of what they have eliminated?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so Chandrakirti deliberately etymologizes them down, so to speak.
Okay.
This is the only reason why they're called Buddhas. And in order to accord with his etymology, I think I'm the person who made up the term solitary realizer, which comes out of prati, eka, alone, and then Buddha, realize.
Did you just say they're like foe destroyers?
They're like foe destroyers in their...
No, he means hero foe destroyers. Solitary realizer foe destroyers would be like hero foe destroyers
Right.
in terms of what they've abandoned.
So the final fruit of a solitary realizer path is foe destroyer. Not that
Yes.
a solitary realizer is already a foe destroyer.
Correct.
That's what I...
He is suitably corrected. But of course, we understood each other entirely. Yes, good to have that correction. I don't mean to make it. Yeah. Teleology. Teleology, philosophy, the study of design or purpose in natural phenomena. 2, the use of ultimate purpose or design, ultimate purpose, as a means of explaining natural phenomena. 3, purposeful development, as in nature or history, toward a final end. Probably 30 years ago, when European and American folk talked about Buddhism, they were concerned because there was no, it says here, well, telos. And they're really overwhelmed with the idea that in Buddhism we had becoming, but not being. Whereas, for instance, in Plato, one becomes, and eventually you get to being. You get to the perfect state. Well, when you look at deity yoga, one thing struck me that the Dalai Lama said one day, I don't know what the context was, it was in lecture, that it is more powerful to meditate on the absence of inherent existence of yourself as a deity than it is on the absence of inherent existence of yourself as an ordinary being. Why? Because eventually you're going to become that deity who will then go on to live forever. Therefore, this is the type of person that is dendua, goes on forever, everlasting. Therefore, to meditate on the absence of inherent existence of something that will go on forever is more, has more impact than merely the temporary, say, Jeffrey Hopkins who looks this way and that way. In any case, what this got through to me was, in the Buddhist systems, you definitely have a purposeful, you have this, you have just what these commentators said was lacking in Buddhism, purposeful development that culminates in a level that you could even call being. That, if you use this terminology. But I think it's a key to understanding why so many people in the past translated words that mean being as becoming. Because they felt in Buddhism it was just becoming forever. It just went on becoming forever. And it was lacking some quality that was in Christianity, say. And it's not, by no means this simple. It's not that simple. And there's no need to translate those words as becoming. Yes?
Did they think that because of the idea of selfhood being sort of a taboo topic?
Yes, that they were reading texts that communicate the idea that there is no self at all. At least seem to indicate that. So anyway, I just...
And that's also related to the whole wheel of becoming, I mean, the whole
Yes.
chakra. I mean, there's
Yes.
no being in it, it's just continual.
Yes, yes. And if you want to look at it in terms of becoming and being, I think that eventually with the attainment of Buddhahood there is being.
Sure.
However, this vocabulary is not used. Still, in the Dalai Lama's discussion, he was indicating a difference between a type of level of being that is afflicted and one that is completely pure, if you follow me. I mean, even if the vocabulary of becoming and being isn't there, there's a whiff of this whole topic. Not just a whiff. There's a huge fragrance of this whole topic. It's interesting to try to look at how especially Christian professors of Christianity, in the many meanings of that term, view Buddhism and how that sets up what people are interested in. I've been involved in a Buddhist-Christian theological encounter for several years with some of the big names in Christian theology. And one of their big concerns is the lack of history in Buddhism. Big concern. It's just terribly bothersome to them. And
What does that refer to? What does that mean?
well, they have this idea that because you see time is cyclical, that everything just wipes out itself eventually, and that therefore Buddhists don't care about history. So we're constantly trying to assure them, yes, there are history books, and there's linear time, and this happened before that. You had breakfast before you had lunch, before you had dinner, and these were your ancestors, they're so important. But still, there's something about, you see, the lack of a culmination in a pure state in which the whole world finishes. Pure state, or heaven and hell state, or whatever, which will then be sealed forever. That just isn't there. On an individual basis, it's there, of people getting out of cyclic existence or attaining Buddhahood. And then I get a whiff of their concern that their individual struggles are not noticed by God. But that's what's lacking. That's what they mean by lack of history. And I wonder if that's a reification, if that's well, I don't know. You know, there's got to be some truth in what they say. That the individual struggle, it's extremely important to get out of cyclic existence, extremely important to attain enlightenment, but the particular struggles that you're having are subsumed under this format of huge stretches of time. 3 periods of countless great aeons, and where we are in the cycle and so forth, that does tend to downplay the individual dramas, which I find particularly attractive myself. But
And then
I don't
there's
know.
no, I guess, God who works in history or through history, has identity with history.
certainly not identity with history, but there's Buddhas and so forth, work their way up here.
Right.
Okay, let me tell you something about let me read you something about I've become close friends with these, not about close friends, but we all like each other a lot. In fact, what I'm going to read to you now about the heroes, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas, the personality types, was something that I included in a paper presented in Japan in 1993 to that group. We were sponsored by Risho Kosakai, I think, one of the Lotus Sutra groups, popular Lotus Sutra groups. But really, it's a lot like fundamentalism in many ways here. You've got the technology of the current age, and people are getting up and saying about how Buddhism helped them through this and that crisis, and and it's it just, you don't know how to, it's lovely in some ways. Anyway, we went up to the country, and my paper was called Religious Imagination, Reflections on Dialogue, Personal Response to Julia Ching. Julia Ching is a Chinese-Canadian Christian, and I am an I'm an American Buddhist, I guess. So it's kind of fun. Anyway, part of the paper I didn't read was just a little appendix. So a person shows signs of having a particular lineage. The signs that someone is of the hero lineage are slight attachment for the body and so forth, great revulsion for cyclic existence, avoidance of ill deeds due to shame, embarrassment, compassion, conscientiousness, and so forth, and having contrition and so forth for ill deeds that have been committed. It's all great stuff, isn't it? When hearing about and contemplating the forward and reverse processes of the Four Noble Truths, the hairs of the body stand on end, and tears well up in the eyes. Assumption of ethics out of wanting protection from fright and out of wishing for good in the future. Taking of the precepts for the sake of only one's own liberation and not giving them up even for political duties or even if it costs one's life. Dedication of all roots of virtue for the sake of release from cyclic existence. Hearers, so then, that's the list. Hearers motivated by a wish for their liberation in which all sufferings of cyclic existence are abandoned, train in the 3 trainings, higher ethics, meditative stabilization, and wisdom. They meditate on the Four Noble Truths, the main path of release being the wisdom realizing the selfness of persons. Would somebody please turn the light off the rest of the way? The signs that someone is of the solitary realizer lineage are few afflictive emotions, and hence disliking commotion. It's great. You know, if you like commotion, busy sort of places, cities and so forth, it's like suggesting the reason why you like it is you've got a lot of afflictive emotions. Probably true.
Don't you think it'd be the other way around, though? Like if you didn't have afflictive emotions, why would commotion bother you? Because you wouldn't have any.
Right.
Wow. She just cuts right through it, doesn't she? Except it's probably asking too much. You do want to concentrate. So in any case, you'd be distracted, probably. And liking to live alone. Low level of compassion, and hence little activity of the heart, such as bringing about others' aims through teaching, doctrine, and so forth. Great pride, and naturally being of middling faculties, and hence keeping quiet about having teachers. If you do have a teacher, you're quiet about it. You don't want people to know. Or you're without a teacher, and you want an incomparable form of enlightenment. I'm going to have the best, you see. It may have something to do with, again, the name Buddha being involved. These indicate a deep-seated sense of difference from others that leads to living in solitude, the loner. Etymologically, they're called solitary realizers because of becoming Buddhified alone. That is to say, they realize Buddha suchness without scripture. This being the case with some, but not all, solitary realizers. In another way, they realize, in another etymology, they realize conditionality through realizing the forward and reverse processes of the 12 links of dependent arising. So there are two types. One, rhinoceros-like, that are definite in their lineage, and the indefinite are called congregating. While on the path of preparation, the rhinoceros-like, for the sake of accumulating, you see it has one horn, alone, living alone, rhinoceros. The rhinoceros-like, for the sake of accumulating unusual collections of merit, please Buddhas for 100 aeons. Then in their last lifetime, without depending on a teacher, they become skilled in the 6 topics of scholarship: the aggregates, sense spheres, constituents, dependent arising, the suitable and unsuitable, and the Four Noble Truths, and thereby generate the paths of preparation, seeing, meditation, no more learning in that very lifetime, though not necessarily in one meditative sitting. Like the solitariness of a rhinoceros horn, in their last lifetime they do not mix with householders, or those who have left behind the household, or with other solitary realizers. From their long accumulation of merit, they achieve a similitude of a Buddha's physical body, having such features as a crown protrusion. The congregating, as per their name, associate with a teacher, but require an extra lifetime to finish the path. They do not necessarily accumulate merit over 100 aeons. This kind of detail, I think that people in the conference just even don't want to hear it.
There was one thing in what you said that was kind of interesting, maybe in the context of what you said at the beginning about not having a sense that there's like a God that really pays attention or cares about your sufferings or kind of what you're doing. It said something about pleasing Buddhas for 100 eons or something along those lines that may have some, I mean, it may be somewhat peripheral to motivation, but, or even in terms
Might be like it, you're saying?
Yeah, or I was before you said that, I was thinking about
That's interesting.
The mantra vehicle, that, like in a Vajrasattva visualization or something.
Very much so.
You know?
Where you're imagining a deity that cleanses you of your sins. And even much like the Jainas, does it in a very physical way, takes some substance, throws it at your eyes, say, and you imagine that all sorts of crud is lifted off of your eyes. In the Jain system, karma is physical, whereas in the Buddhist system it's not. But then in Buddhist Tantrism, a lot of karma is treated as if it is physical. Yes?
When I was talking about the feats at the end of the discussion on the deity of it too, didn't it have the language of coming under the care of the Buddhas?
Oh yes, very much so. What I often say is many of the things that European and American Buddhists have tried to run away from in Buddhism, they eventually find, run away from in Christianity by turning to Buddhism, they find it's right there in Buddhism in the end. Even when solitary realizers dwell in villages or towns, they control their bodies and senses tightly. And thus, when they teach those whom they pity, they do so with physical signs and not by speech. Can you imagine trying to teach the 12 links of dependent arising by physical signs? Also, they use physical displays of magic to cause the unfaithful to achieve faith. The great vehicle lineage of bodhisattvas is superior. We're always concerned with superiority, right? To the lesser vehicle of hearers and solitary realizers, because persons endowed with this lineage have very sharp faculties, are involved with helping others, become skilled in all branches of learning, and attain the fruit of the great enlightenment of Buddhahood. The signs that someone has the great vehicle lineage are naturally very great compassion, enthusiasm for the great vehicle, great forbearance in the difficult deeds for gaining the doctrine, thorough practice of the virtue of the 6 perfections. Okay. Enough. So, referring to this qualm that Tsongkhapa raises on page 135. And frankly, the qualm has always bothered me, and I felt I never understood it. I mean, I could translate the words, and but just even the rough part of what's going on, what the conclusion is, I couldn't figure out. So at first, I thought to read a bit from Nagarjuna, the Precious Garland. Stanza beginning 176. This is Nagarjuna speaking to King Shatavahana, telling him about how to achieve enlightenment. O great king, listen to how your body will be adorned with the 32 signs of a great being, the 32 signs of a great being. These are signs also that a Chakravartin, a universal emperor, has. But it said that, I'll give you the line. The good major and minor marks of a universal emperor are said to arise from a single act of faith in the king of subduers. All universal emperors are regarded as having these 32, but their purity, their luster and beauty cannot begin to match those of a Buddha. So, listen, here's how you get the 32. Through the proper honoring of reliquaries, honorable beings, superiors, and the elderly, you will become a universal monarch. Your glorious hands and feet marked with the design of wheels. Honoring reliquaries, honorable beings, superiors, and the elderly. Okay. Then, how are you going to get flat feet? O king, always maintain firmly what you have vowed about the practices. You will then become a bodhisattva with feet that are very level. I translated it level, with feet that are very flat, but that's what it means. Then, how are you going to have fingers joined by webs of light? It's very interesting, fascinating. You can do a thesis on this. Through gifts and pleasant speech. This means, actually, to students, you're supposed to give material gifts. And pleasant speech means to talk about achieving high status in rebirth as a human or as a god. And to talk about definite liberation from cyclic existence. The lower level being just liberation from cyclic existence, the high level being attainment of Buddhahood. That's pleasant speech. Purposeful and concordant behavior. Purposeful behavior is to cause others to practice these paths. Concordant behavior is to practice them yourself. So through these are called the 4 ways of gathering students. You know, you give them material things, you start there. You will have hands with glorious fingers joined by webs of light. Interesting. That's where the connection comes from, you know? Between doing those things.
Maybe giving, maybe? Maybe giving is related to hands.
Maybe. Through abundant giving of the best food and drink, your glorious hands and feet will be soft. Your hands and feet and shoulder blades and the nape of your neck will broaden, so your body will be big and those 7 areas broad. So then, how are you going to get to be well anyway? Through never doing harm and freeing the condemned, beautiful will be your body, straight and large, very tall with long fingers and broad backs of the heels. Through promoting the vowed practices, your good color will be glorious. Your ankles will not be prominent. You know how ankles always stand out? Your body hairs will grow upward. Do you know anyone with body hairs? Do you have body hair? Maybe you don't want to admit it. Through your zeal for knowledge and the arts and so forth, and through imparting them, you will have the calves of an antelope, a sharp mind and great wisdom. If others seek your wealth and possessions, or when others seek your wealth and possessions, through the discipline of your immediate giving, you will have broad hands, a pleasant complexion, and will become a leader of the world. Through reconciling well friends who have been divided, your glorious secret organ will retract inside, like a horse. Through giving good houses and nice comfortable carpets, your color will be very soft, like pure stainless gold. Okay, it goes on, not too much more. Now, 135. The objection by this hypothetical person what is it? What is the objection to?
Deity yoga.
Deity yoga as being?
A means of getting a means of getting a form body of a Buddha.
Why is the person objecting to it?
Because he's saying that, or she is saying that, just as there are ways of getting other things that are not, that the cause and the effect are not directly related, so maybe you don't need deity yoga to get the body of a Buddha.
And particularly? For what? Yeah, right so far, but make it within cause and effect.
Oh, within a happy migration, that you get a happy migration from giving and all of these things, not from meditating on being a god or a rich person in your next life.
Mhm. And also Chakravartin.
Chakravartin.
As Nagarjuna said, it was from one moment of faith in a Buddha.
Right.
That's right out of the Ashoka Vadana, isn't it? Legend of King Ashoka.
Is it?
I believe so.
So, the examples used are of rebirth. And so, Tsongpa concedes, right, that for rebirth, in a happy migration or a bad migration, as a hell being, hungry ghost, or animal, one doesn't need to have a cause that's similar to the effect, similar in aspect to the effect. Aspect meaning you don't need to meditate on that, having that shape of face and so forth. And so then what does he say? What does he say about the perfection vehicle? What's the procedure in the perfection vehicle?
The perfection, is that?
Yeah, for attaining a Buddha's body adorned with the major and minor marks.
Particularly the first three, right? The first three perfections, right? I was just completing all of the perfections.
This says that it's gradual, doesn't it? That you gradually develop.
Yes, he says it's not a case of rebirth. Now, this is hard to keep straight, I think, because he says on a high level of the path, you get a body that has the major and minor marks of a Buddha. That sounds like rebirth, right? At that point. But then from that high level of path, I mean, he doesn't say when that is. Sort of fishy that he doesn't say when. 8th Bodhisattva ground, 9th Bodhisattva ground, wherever. Then you have a Buddha's major and minor marks, but not to the marvelous extent that a Buddha does. And these turn into a Buddha's major and minor marks. Therefore, it's not, he's answering, in the perfection vehicle also, not just in Tantra, but in the perfection vehicle also, the attainment of a Buddha's major and minor marks is not a case of being born with them. Now that's despite the fact that we just read from Nagarjuna how you get them. Do you follow? What Tsongkhapa has interjected is that from a high bodhisattva ground, you get the major and minor marks of a Buddha. Probably from these very practices that Nagarjuna was talking about.
Although I was going to say, to get to the highest, these higher grounds, I mean, you're going to have to be reborn and be reborn and be reborn.
Yes.
So in a sense...
So there is a rebirth process in getting, it seems, to the point where you first have the major and minor marks. Right? But you're not at a Buddha yet. Then from then on, you use, this becomes a similar cause of the major and minor marks of a Buddha. This, he says, is the procedure of the perfection vehicle. Therefore, he's saying, even in the perfection vehicle, they say you have to have a similar cause. They say that. And I think he's saying they don't have an adequate one. Right? They hold this, that you have to have a cause that's similar to the effect, but they don't have an adequate one. The uncommon cause is deity yoga. So he's quarreling with the objector's position, implied position, that in the perfection vehicle, you're born into the body of a Buddha through having causes that don't accord in aspect with the effect.
In what sense do they accord an aspect? I'm not sure I follow that. According to some.
Let's say it's the beginning of the 8th Bodhisattva ground, but that's not. It's a high Bodhisattva ground. I say, it seems that what he's saying is that you're born into having a body that has the major minor marks. Then that body itself gets better and better. So you see, that's the similar cause. That's the similar cause. You with me yet? Not yet.
I'm not sure, because it still seems like to get the body with any of the marks that would just be increasing, you would have done generosity.
Yes, definitely. But that's not as a Buddha. That's as in high Bodhisattva ground. Therefore,
I see.
you see there are these many
You're
issues.
still born into it though. I mean, you said,
You're born into it at whatever ground that is. But in terms of that body turning into a Buddha's body, it's not a matter of rebirth.
You've already got it.
what's the difference between the reborn into the minor marks, or are they more subtle? The wheels are more subtle on the bottom of your feet, for instance? and then-
Oh, well, from what Nagarjuna is saying, the contrast with the Chakravartin, Universal Emperor, the luster is greater, etc.
So in that same life, then you do something with causes that are similar to the effect, and then the luster comes up.
Well, you see, I think this is why I think what he's saying is, in the perfection vehicle, they say that you get this better body, and that turns into a Buddhist body. But he's saying, that just doesn't work. But he's saying, don't mistake this for being a matter of rebirth in the perfection vehicle itself. Still, he doesn't give any sources that this is the perfection vehicle system, although it's very hard to find him being dishonest about these matters, but it's also unusual for him not to be giving his sources.
Well, he says on 136, he says simply that in the perfection vehicle, they do not assert that on the path there are no major and minor marks,
Yes.
which then arise newly upon attainment of truth.
Yes.
So he does it by, he doesn't necessarily have a source, he just doesn't have a source that says to the contrary for his own position.
But does he should have a source that says, on the beginning of the 8th Bodhisattva ground, the Bodhisattva is born. We should look at his, the presentation of his commentary on Chandrakirti's, what I call supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle. That deals with the 10 Bodhisattva grounds. It may be obvious there. Maybe obvious. But I'm just pointing out that he doesn't cite a text.
And couldn't there be more rebirth between the 8th and the 10th?
This is the question. Are there any rebirths at a certain point, or is it one long lifetime? You would think that from his point of view, once you get to that level of having the major minor marks of the path, then it's one long lifetime up to Buddhahood.
Right. Because I'm just thinking, if we take the example of the Buddha, Shakyamuni, I mean, it seems like he was born with the marks right away.
According to this system, he was enlightened many lifetimes ago and deliberately chose to appear. This was merely a supreme emanation body.
Right.
Anyway. Okay, that's that.
Did you at one time say that an Arhat is one who has not yet gotten rid of the innate obstructions to liberation?
No. Arhat has overcome all of the obstructions to liberation, both artificial and innate.
Because then, did you say something about if they sneeze, they get a little,
Now that's different. These are called Nengelenki Tima. Defilements of assuming bad states. Okay, then. Any questions, points of discussion, and so forth from Hopkins' presentation and the Tantric distinction? It's all clear by now, isn't it? Crystal clear. Have you done the reading?
Not all of it,
Hmm. You wonder why you're lost.
no. I know why I'm lost.
Is it that reason?
Because I was in reading.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I could say something like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I do. Any points to be discussed here? Yes.
I had a question about Kongpo's reputation of
Yes, what page?
I don't have a page number. When he refutes him, he says that only highest yoga tantra has a generation stage.
Yes.
Since only highest, and the reason was, I thought, that only highest yoga tantra mimics the 8 stages of death.
Yes.
But I didn't understand the relationship between the reason and why, if something has 8 stages of, why does highest yoga tantra only have generation stage? And why does that make reason substantiate that?
All 4 Tantra sets have deity yoga, right? And some people have loosely called deity yoga the stage of generation. He's not willing to say that. He wants to say that the stage of generation is peculiar to highest yoga tantra. Why? Because in the process of the meltdown of phenomena, you know, when you realize emptiness, when you do the ultimate deity, what's equivalent to the ultimate deity in action tantra, you imagine a process of passing through 8 levels of mind, of subtler levels of mind, which is like the actual process of death. And have we done these 8? No? These 8 make you, well, what is it called? Make you to a kana mete. I can't translate. Mirage. I have to get started. Mirage, smoke, fireflies, or sparks. Flame. Mind of vivid, white appearance. It's a good question. Mind of vivid, red or orange. It's called increase, chela. And the mind of vivid, black, irritainment. Called niratainment, nirto. And then the mind of clear light, also known as the fundamental innate mind of clear light. So upon reflecting on emptiness, you, with the dissolving of phenomena, or the penetration of the absence of inherent existence, you imagine that they all dissolve. And in this process, once you've imagined the dissolution of all of these phenomena, you imagine a mirage-like appearance. Now, apparently, these are the stages, well, this is as it's laid out in the Guhya Samaja system, a highest yoga tantra of central importance to Gelupa. No matter how many people say that Kala Chakra is the central tantra of Gelu. Guhya Samaja is the central tantra in Gelu. Many people say the other, but it's just a true. for instance, Songbo never wrote on Kalachakra. He wrote a great deal. He wrote 4 texts on Guhya Samaja. The Tantra colleges of Upper and Lower Lhasa, that's their curriculum, Guhya Samaja. There are monasteries and so forth that do Kalachakra. The Dalai Lama himself gives the Kalachakra initiation. It's very important, but it does not have, within the Gelugpa sect, the prominence that the Guhya Samaja system does. So, in mimicking the stages of death, because these are the stages of death, one mimics them. That's a pretty stupid way of speaking. First is mirage, the sense of, apparently sometimes when people are dying, they sit up in bed. They're seeing something. Yes.
It's within the stage of generation that.
Yes, this is done. Yes. And one mimics it. It's called merba. Merba has many meanings. Imagination. And then that changes to smoke, which is described as like smoke, a thin smoke spread throughout a room, or of smoke billowing from a chimney. 2 different ways, very different ways. And then of fireflies, or in Tibet, you use a wok to pop barley. It puts sand in the bottom of the wok, heat the sand, put the barley on top of the sand, which then pops the barley. And then they take the barley off and grind it. They separate it from the sand, but it sounds as if it would be difficult and dangerous, but it's not. And the bottom of the wok, because it's sitting on a fire, gets very black. And little sparks form. If you've ever seen, the campfire type situation where the bottom of the pan has gotten really black, the sparks form there. And that's the reference to sparks here. And there were fireflies, at least in India, I'm sure there were in Tibet. I talked about this once in Australia, and it doesn't work. There are no fireflies. And the next is of a butter lamp flame. And one imagines this.
So is it, I'm a little confused.
These are appearances that occur to the mind of somebody who's dying.
Right, but when you're doing this in generation stage, all phenomena dissolve and then there's just a flame left? Is that...
No, and then you imagine that you're passing, you imagine these appearances.
I see, okay.
The flame is said to be of a butter lamp, and it's described first it's described as flickering. You know what a candle flame is like when it's about to go out due to the fact that all the wax has been used up, and it's sputtering? Nobody knows this. Some know it, some don't. It's got very little to work on, so it's going like this. And some describe it as the actual flame going like so, and then others of what you would see above the butter lamp. If you were looking at it like this, you would see light, a cast that was changing. And then that changes, there are 2 phases within this one, to a steady flame. Now I think we'd probably see candles. If you're going to see something other than the cast of it, if you're going to see some implement, or is that the word? You would see a candle and now a steady flame. I don't believe that butter lamps have worked their way into the archetypes for all beings.
Given time.
Then, there's a marked change, and these are called the 4 levels of subtle mind. And in fact, when the word conqueror, gyalwa, is used for a Buddha, in the Guhya Samaja system, it particularly refers to having overcome these 3 coarser levels within the subtle. Now, what one passes through first is a mind of vivid white appearance. In this stage, one doesn't have any sense of body. I mean, that's gone a long time ago. And everything is just a vivid white appearance. It's just your own mind appearing as a vivid whiteness. And this is moon, referred to as moon. But it's not like the moon shining in the sky. It's like the sky itself is this whiteness, moon whiteness, which is your own mind. And then that is replaced by a mind of vivid red or orange. It's called increase, which is then like sun. So these are not the near-death experiences that people talk about where light is shining. That's earlier, light shining. Because here, your very consciousness itself has become a mind of red or orange appearance called increase. Then that shifts to a mind of vivid, and I think vivid is fine to keep using. I used to say radiant, but radiant suggests moving from here to there. Vivid black near attainment, which is night, moon, sun, and night. This is in 2 parts. In the first part of it, you're conscious of what's going on, and in the second part, you become unconscious and swoon. It is so thick. The darkness is so thick. And then when these 3 clear away, what's left is the mind of clear light, which is compared to dawn, not sunrise, dawn. Dawn comes a good deal before sunrise. So in the stage of generation in highest yoga tantra, as practiced in Gelug, Kala Chakra, the stages are actually a little different, which is odd in that these should be the same for all sentient beings, but then people try to explain it away by people having different constitutions and so forth. So in the stage of generation, prior to appearing as a deity, at the end of the phase of what would be ultimate deity in Action Tantra, one does this imagination before using then an imitation of the mind of clear light to appear as the deity. And this, since this is distinctive to highest yoga tantra, only highest yoga tantra has a stage of generation. The other 3 tantras do not. Now, in Sankhya, which is like the proto-Indian system, even from a Buddhist point of view, it's like in the beginning there was Sankhya. All phenomena are divided into 2 classes, person and nature, nature being matter, material. The person is pure consciousness, and the person is equivalent in many respects, to the mind of clear light. The nature or matter, prakriti, person is purusha in Sanskrit, nature is prakriti, purusha. In Tibetan, Kibu and Rangshin, there are synonyms. Now the nature is divided into three types. The three gunas, the three qualities, the three attributes. And these are sattva, which in even Tsongkhapa uses these terms for the mind of vivid white appearance, sattva, rajas, the mind of red or orange increase, and tamas, the mind of black near attainment. Sort of the place where the proto-Indian system that Buddhists so avidly seek to distinguish themselves from eventually comes back home to Buddhism.
Although they flip it, don't they? I mean, here black is even subtler, whereas there tamas is the grossest, and then it moves its way up to the subtlest, which is sattva. And here it looks like they flipped it. The white is grosser, and then it's going.
Yeah, it's an interesting order, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the dark and heavy, the one that makes you pass out, is just before the mind of clear light. And it does seem that you're going from the, they do, however, put these in one class as subtle.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem that these are, that there's a progression to the more subtle.
Do you get any of the masculine or feminine affiliations that are connected with Prakriti and Purusha in this system at all?
I don't think so.
Although isn't the white the male, the sperm, and the red is the ovum, the female? At least in the...
But I don't think the mind of white appearance is, right? Or the mind of red increase.
I once read one modern day Nyingma tape, which may be different in the system, which suggested that it was. That was
Here?
not
To go with these two?
in describing going into the bardo anyway, at death. He did make that connection. Now, but it's an oral teaching in a contemporary book, so I don't know.
Actually, you see the white because it's the male essence coming down, and then you see the red because it's the female essence coming out.
It's probably in my own book. We should look in death, intermediate state, and rebirth and see, because we're trying to deal within the same system.
Right.
Bring in other systems, but make sure we know.
Because in the Tibetan book of the Dalai,
which does have a male-female association in general, but each person has both. So you should right on.
Excuse me, maybe
Yes.
it doesn't pertain to this at all, but I've heard Siguya Samaja is a father tantra and Kalachakra is a mother tantra. What's the difference? Why do they have that connotation of gender?
According to Tsongkhapa, all highest yoga tantras are non-dual tantras. Then within them, if the illusory body, am I not right? If the illusory body is emphasized, then it's called a father tantra. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if the mind of clear light is emphasized, then it's called a mother tantra. Now, okay, that should be enough for the time being.
Thank you.
So, for next time, there's that's Thursday, isn't it? Now, the Longchenpa's presentation is just 11 pages. It's pages 124 to 135 in this. And would you run your eyes over it? You know, don't get bogged down in it. It's something you can easily get bogged down in. Run your eyes over it, just so that there's something in the background so we can talk about it this coming time. And then the following time, I'll be asking you to create a short list, very short list, of some way to describe the difference between what Tsongkhapa is doing and what Longchenpa is doing. It's very hard to do. You know, you immediately start falling all over yourself. Or adjectives that would describe what each of them is doing. It's very hard to do, right? Without getting, you know, but it's a lot of fun if you do it out of fun, just to see how you trip up all over yourself.
And that's due 6 a week from today?
Well, it's just something we'll talk about in class.